Hello there. Today I want to talk about Palpatine Yellow. It's kind of a swarm deck that I've been having a lot of fun with. And I do want to mention that, I recorded a Palpatine Yellow video about 2 months ago. I was having fun with it then, uh, having more fun with it now. A lot has changed in the deck. I've actually got 16 cards swapped out just in the main deck. So that's not even including the sideboard. So here's the new deck. We'll talk through the whole thing. But before I go through it in detail, I want to talk about why Palpatine Yellow now. I did just take this to a short showdown yesterday and felt pretty good about it and was able to win. And I think the timing is pretty good for Palpatine Yellow right now. One of the reasons is because I think the really quick aggro decks like Sabine and Leia have kind of fallen out of favor uh, thanks to Boba Yellow. The KTOD guys did a pretty awesome video about a very strong deck that crushes most Sabine lists. And so that's kind of good for Palpatine, right? Palpatine is fine into Boba, not so much into Sabine. And so you'll see when we look at the deck, I've kind of just given up the Sabine matchup. If you play against Sabine, you have a chance, but it's not a great chance, to be honest with you. But because I don't think many people are playing Sabine, I thought I'll take this. And actually, I was at a 13-person tournament, and no one was running Sabine green or Sabine red. There was one Sabine blue, no yellows either. This deck is also great into any of the blue control decks, right? If their plan is to super laser blast and vigilance their way to victory, they're going to really struggle against you. And I had that in the tournament. I was up against a Vader blue and 1-2-0, never really worried about that matchup. It's also a good deck because people figure out how it works, but folks don't really have a whole lot of experience playing against it. Probably playing against Palpatine in general, but if they have seen Palpatine, it's probably Palpatine blue. And so, the fact that they have to figure out on the fly how to play against it makes it quite strong. And then it's super fun. That's a good reason to play any deck. I think that this deck is probably more fun to play than 90% of the decks out there. So I enjoy it. I think you would too. Okay, let's dive into the deck. The first thing to notice about the deck is that there are 20 units that cost 2 or less. And that probably sounds nuts. In most decks, that would probably just be a bad deck. And that's kind of why I refer to this one as a little bit of a swarm deck. In Palpatine, that is fine, right? Because of his ability, he's sacrificing a dude. You want it to be a little dude. You don't want it to be a big dude to deal a damage and draw a card, right? If we filled this deck with a bunch of big and medium-sized units, first off, we wouldn't want to use Palpatine's ability. But also, if we did use it, we would have a harder time playing more stuff. The fact that we have so many little units makes it so that we can constantly keep 2 or 3 units on the board to apply pressure, but also to keep triggering Palpatine's ability, right? We're drawing more little units. Every once in a while, we'll draw a Relentless, but we have tons of little units. And this is part of what makes the deck so good against those blue control decks. It's because those blue control decks are really, really good at killing one thing a turn. And if you can play a Greedo or a TIE Fighter in addition to your normal play most turns, maybe get some extra damage in with Snow Trooper Lieutenants, you're going to sneak in a lot of damage that they're not ready to deal with. In addition to that, a lot of times they're banking on you running out of cards. Palpatine doesn't run out of cards. It never got close. I think I ended most games with 4 or 5 cards in my hand at the end of the game, even against the Vader blue deck that I was up against. This deck also has some pretty sweet combos, right? So with Palpatine, you get to take control of a damaged unit when you flip him. Everyone's expecting that. What they don't necessarily expect is for you to play Change of Heart and sacrifice their unit when he's not on his unit side, right? So when he's on his leader side, he can still sacrifice units. Change of Heart is a pretty good card at 6, but it becomes nuts with Palpatine because normally when you play Change of Heart, your opponent gets it back at the end of the round unless you have found a way to kill it, right? But when we're playing Change of Heart in this deck, as long as we have a resource to spare, we play Change of Heart, take their dude, probably attack with it into another one of their dudes, maybe into their base, but then we sacrifice it with Palpatine to deal another damage to one of their guys and draw a card. And it gets really nuts when you start combining it with Bib, because a lot of times folks are expecting you to maybe want to do that at 7 resources because you need the extra resource from Palpatine, right? But Bib lets us do it a turn early. Because he gets to play an event for 1 less, you can play Change of Heart for 5. So on 6 resource turn, you can Change of Heart, their biggest thing that they have on the field, use Palpatine's ability to sacrifice it and draw a card. It gets very fun and somewhat frustrating for the other guy. Here's another combo in the deck. This one is amazing. You can play Sneak Attack for 2 to play a unit from your hand that enters ready, right? At the end of at the start of the group phase, you're going to defeat it. There are multiple units that you can do that with in this deck. Reinforcement Walker is a great one, right? You effectively have a 12 damage swing that turn because you heal your base for 3. You don't need the card draw because you're playing Palp and you have plenty of cards. So when you bring the Reinforcement Walker in, you heal for 3. You attack with it, you heal for another 3. You did 6 damage to their base, right? So amazing. And normally you would do that on 7 resources. With Bib, you can do it on 6 resources. Super, super fun. Here's another one, though. You can Sneak Attack Vader. And again, because we're using Bib, we can do this with 5 resources. Vader enters play ready, right? We're going to trigger the when played and the ambush in that order. In our deck, we have 3 Snowtrooper Lieutenants. Snowtrooper Lieutenant, when played, lets you attack with an Imperial unit. It gets +2. Vader has entered play ready. So you can actually trigger the Snowtrooper Lieutenant from the Vader Surge on Vader to attack for 7. Then the ambush will resolve that you've already triggered, and he will ready again and attack for 5 again. No one sees that coming. Everyone has been programmed to think that Snowtrooper Lieutenant doesn't work with Vader. And it's true that, if it's just the normal ambush version, Vader is not ready when you have triggered his when played. And so you cannot normally use Snowtrooper Lieutenant on Vader when you grab him with the when played ability. But here it totally works. So the 7 attack has to be first, and then the ambush has to be second, right? There has to still be a unit left to attack. But it's great. You can do it at 5 resources if you really need to. If you have more resources, Vader's going to die at the end. You might use Palpatine's ability on him to deal another damage and draw a card. It's just great. And part of what makes it so great is we're still not done talking about it because you still have 1 resource worth of stuff that you can grab, right? So you can also grab a TIE Fighter, or you can grab this guy. And I was a bit down on the ISB Gent for a long, long, long time until I figured out a couple things. First off, he's mainly just more card draw in this deck, right? Against those decks that are trying to remove 1 unit a turn, he fills the Power of the Dark Side or the Avenger slot, where we're just offering him up to keep the rest of our units alive, right? So since those decks have risen in popularity, he's become great. But also he turns on the Emperor, right? When the Emperor flips, he gets to take control of a damaged unit. And if you play Vader for 7 resources, when you have 7 resources, you might not, the timing just can get awkward, where maybe he's killing something, and so there's not a damaged unit that you want to grab. ISB agent makes it really simple to make sure that you ping the thing that you want to ping. So grabbing him in addition to the Snow Trooper Lieutenant on the sneak attack, or even, just on a normal Vader. Maybe you don't use the Snow Trooper. There's so many little guys that there's a lot of options. Maybe you grab a Piet and an ISB agent. That can be very, very fun. So let's talk through the rest of the deck, everything that I haven't talked about so far. Greedo is there to push damage and to be another body. There's only 2 because Vader can't grab him. Other than that, he's great. The tie is straightforward. Piet is fun mainly to grab with Vader to turn on your reinforcement walkers, your relentless, and your devastator to push damage even faster. I did have a game in the tournament that went super long and was able to get Piet and Devastator out on the same turn. And that was like 8 damage to base out of 2 cards, because since Devastator has ambush and overwhelm, because of Piet, any excess damage is just going straight to base. So that ended it. Yularen's in there because we are a slow deck, right? We do need to make it kind of to the end game. So his healing is important. He's an official to turn on the Royal Guard. So he and Bib are probably the 2 main cards that you want to see in your opening hand. That's really the start that you want. Bib Fortuna is amazing. Pretty much nobody kills him because he's shielded, and so he's annoying to try to kill. And there's enough events in the deck that you'll get some sweet value out of him. I have 1 Cartel Spacer in there, mainly to delay, sometimes to grab with Vader. I didn't end up using it a lot, to be honest with you. No Good to Me Dead is probably the MVP of the deck. If we didn't have this card, we probably couldn't afford to play Palpatine Yellow. In the Boba matchup, you really want to deny them their 8 resources on their flip turn. I'm looking to have either ramped with Super Laser Tech or resupply already, and on their flip turn, I want to basically play No Good to Me Dead on Boba and waylay something just to prevent them from having their 8 resources. Maybe resupply and No Good to Me Dead. That's the game plan. I played against a Han Green. It won me the match. It's a really, really valuable card. I used it on Vader in the Vader Blue matchup. It is worth potentially mulliganing for in the right matchup and then just hanging on to for that big, big turn. We talked about sneak attack already. I love sneak attack. In a lot of decks, it's hard to find room for it just because, you having multiple cards in your hand at the same time, right? Like you're going to want to resource it, right? In a lot of other decks, because this deck draws so many cards, you can afford to hang on to it to sneak attack your Vader or your reinforcement walker or your Devastator. The Snow Trooper Lieutenant is mainly there for Vader. If I'm not pulling it with him, I'm probably resourcing it. I've got 1 probe droid in there to help with early removal. To be honest with you, right? We're kind of just giving up if we're playing against Sabine. We have a little bit in the sideboard to help with it, but yeah, one probe droid might bail you out. Maybe mulligan for that in that matchup. The 3 Royal Guards are huge. People forget that they're a 3/5 in this deck. They're awesome. They buy you a lot of time. sometimes they are the right thing to fish out with Vader when you play Vader, just because you've kind of stabilized, but you need time to take down a big unit, and so their Sentinel is very helpful. The super laser technicians and the resupplies are pretty obvious. You need to ramp in this deck to get to the big stuff, and to get to the point where you can take advantage of having sacrificed so many little units, right? You have 5 cards in your hand and you need to burn through them. Waylay is kind of used as our early removal. It can help in that, Sabine matchup to Waylay their A-Wing. It can help in the Boba matchup just to not play units. That's mainly what it's there for. It can also help against, just big upgrade strategies. The deck can struggle a little bit against, say, like a turret or a Luke that's going heavy upgrade on leaders. But if we see, Kanan with a Jedi lightsaber, Waylay will shut that down. I think it's interesting that I only have 2 overwhelming barrages in the deck. There is one more in the sideboard. In this deck, overwhelming barrage is really not what we want to play on 5. We can potentially play it on 4, right? So Bib Fortuna into Royal Guard into a overwhelming barrage is not bad on 4, to be honest with you. But Royal Guard's about the biggest unit that we have until we get past 5 resources. So overwhelming barrage really is a late game card in this deck. It's not a middle game card. But late in the game, when we're closing things out, typically our opponent's going to play a big unit or 2, and overwhelming barrage is going to save us. The one Gladiator Star Destroyer has come in handy a few times. Typically, Change of Heart is more valuable, but in a situation where you need to stop multiple units from swinging, and you can throw Sentinel on something, it can be really helpful. We've talked about Change of Heart and Vader. They're amazing. Typically you already have quite a few little weenies out before you play Vader, and then Vader brings in 2 more, and all of a sudden you've got 6 or 7 units on the board. It gets very, very fun. And then originally when I built the deck, I didn't have quite as much top end, but I found that I really, really like having this much closing potential. You can resource it if you need to, in early matchups. But your big stuff is pretty immune to those, Avengers and Power of the Dark Side. So you might as well have some big stuff. So Relentless is there for those vigilance games. It's pretty easy to get to. You will draw it because you're playing Palpatine, and just don't resource it. Hang on to it, and you'll win. So let's talk about the sideboard for a little bit. I'll actually go highest to lowest. So a couple more of the big ships in case you need to find those for more answers to the blue decks. A couple Syndicate lackeys to try to help with Sabine, right? So they can ambush in, kill Sabine and survive, probably take out another unit later. I didn't end up having to use them because I didn't pair up against the Sabine. But you'd swap out the big ships, right? The Relentless and the Devastators for them. I actually end up bringing in Bosk in most games, and I think I probably need to find space in the main deck for him. He does cool things with Bib and all of our events, for sure. There's some extra value to be had there. And I scored it in several games. He's hard to make stick, right? Especially at 5. Typically at 5, we're still kind of ramping. We're wanting to get into our Change of Heart sacrifice game. And so he's just a bit awkward. And I think Traders kind of falls in the same boat. It's just not quite the plan for this deck. since we can play Change of Heart for basically the same cost because of bib, and Traitorous is a little easier to deal with. There's a third Overwhelming Barrage, a seventh Fleet Defender. Modi is kind of an in-game card, right? He's to enable even more Palpatine shenanigans, and then a Shoot First to help us with an aggro matchup, or even one that wants to trade into our units. I really didn't run into that. Most people realized I'm the beat down. I need to get in a ton of damage before Palpatine flips, which is right. But if they start going after your units, they can shut down your card draw a little bit, and so Shoot First can help make sure that you have some survivability. So I think it's worth spending maybe a minute or two talking about weaknesses of the deck. When you're doing your Change of Heart and Palpatine shenanigans, the worst things for you to run into are waylays and changes of hearts. Because if Change of Heart their guy, you're planning on attacking with it and sacrificing it, but they waylay it, they get it back. Right? Same thing if they, even if you steal their guy with Palpatine, if they Change of Heart it, they get it back forever. That's how the wording on that card reads. So those are things to be mindful of and play around. I don't think most decks are playing Change of Heart right now, but the Boba Yellow may sideboard it in, and the Boba Yellow will have waylays. So it's one where you may want to save those till after they've played, use their resources, and don't wait on the Palpatine sacrifice, right? Like if you grabbed a fire spray with your Palpatine flip, I would not be greedy with it and try to keep it to make it swing for 5 and space a bunch. I would grab it and I would get it out of here, sacrifice it. You've gotten to that point in the game. Take the win that you removed the fire spray, and get rid of it before they can waylay it. And I think you'll be happy with it. Otherwise, it's a blowout if they get to Change of Heart it back. So that's it. I hope you enjoy playing this deck. I find it to be a lot of fun. Take care.